This video is brought to you by...
Man, y'all already know what it is. Cool green clothing. We done gone worldwide. We coming straight out of Baltimore. Man, do yourself a favor right quick. Go online right now at coolgreenclothing.com and make your purchase. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you ain't cool and getting the green, you're in the way. And that's just basic.
What's going on, YouTube fam? It's your boy Tony 2 times, and we back with another episode of the Baltimore Way, man. Before I start, be sure to tap that like button. It's free. It helps get the video out there. Definitely watch this video to the end so you can hear the full story and all the details in the case. Everything in this video is alleged. For my day one fam, y'all already know it's all love. Thanks for tuning back into another episode. If you're new to the channel and you feeling the content, feel free to subscribe. Definitely hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. Oh yeah, feel free to share the channel with your peoples. Everybody is welcome. With that being said, let's get right into the story. For a lot of young men all over America, it will come a time when they have to make a tough choice. Do they choose to go right, focus on school, making something of themselves, keeping their head down, and being a kid everyone looks at in some places as boring, being lame, or not on nothing? Or do they go left and do what the crowd, their peers, and everyone else is doing? I know for a fact because I have lived in both the suburbs and the trenches. It doesn't matter if a young man comes from a two-parent household who takes family trips, shows a lot of love at home. It still will be some kids in that nice neighborhood trying to make a name for themselves. And he has to decide, will he be one of them? Sometimes kids from the nicer part of town will even try to go even harder because they feel people already think they are bluffing or not like that. So they have a point to prove. On the other side of that coin, you have young men that grew up in the trenches, saw a lot and been through a lot early on. They might even come from a loving family as well. But once they go outside and see their reality, whether that's crime scenes every other day, trapped in an addiction, or shooting and robbing. And for some, they don't see no other way to survive, so they jump out there head first. For some, like myself and many others, they go through their trials and tribs, bumps and bruises, might almost lose their life in the streets or go to prison, but they learn from their mistakes or others. And they say to themselves, nah, that's not the move. I'm gonna try to go right, since I spent so much time going left. But others get chance after chance and never learn until it's too late. And on this episode of the Baltimore Way, we'll be discussing the case of two young men who chose the streets, and their reward was 170 years in prison. Back in the summer of 2024, 19-year-old Darius Wolfe was a young man trying his best to navigate the streets of Baltimore. Since a hopper, Darius had been outside, and you could say he was in the streets. But that wasn't always the case. Early on, he tried to focus on other things, like sports and boxing, which he was very good at. But around about 14 years old, he would become a victim when him and his brother was in a Park Heights area of the city, and both were shot. His brother lost his life, and Darius was hit in the face. He turned 15 years old in the hospital, and everybody was praying he would recover, which the young man fortunately did, but not without any issues. As he moved on with life, he dealt with a lot of pain and anger, diagnosed with PTSD. He would inflict that pain on others, landing him in and out of juvenile placement, from minor things all the way up to serious charges like robbery and carjacking. In total, over 28 placements. As he moved through the system, either he got slaps on the wrist or juvenile programs meant to help young men in crisis, but he would simply buck the system and leave or just not attend. By that summer, Darius was out there trying to find a way to make some money and survive. Now the father of two, he made his choice. He picked his gun up and started rotating with a crew to go on licks. He had already dodged a lot of situations, almost losing his life to the Baltimore streets and ducking an adult conviction, being charged as a juvenile for earlier carjacking that happened out Pikesville, Baltimore County. Prosecutors wanted him charged as an adult, but again, he made out. and the case was weighed down to juvenile court. Another young man he rotated with was at the time 17-year-old Reginald Belton, who was also in and out of trouble in the juvenile system. Reginald was also given chance after chance, but both young men on the same type of time, they often went on moves together. On a hot summer evening, August 2024, Darius, Reginald, and another young man was bopping around, trying to hit a lick in Pikesville, Baltimore County. An elderly woman, 87-year-old Miss Edna Smith, had a home in the area, located on Brattle Road. The retired school teacher who taught kids for almost 40 years was very close to her family and got around well, including her daughter at the time, 66-year-old Valarie Smith, who was an accomplished optometrist, which is an eye doctor, and she also worked in the community doing public service. Up in age, Miss Edna will often depend on her daughter to run errands for her. And this day, Miss Valarie went to the grocery store to pick up some items and drop them off to her mother. When she pulled up in front of the home, she noticed 3 young men who had ski masks on their face. She at first paid it no mind, but then they approached her. One upped the gun and put it to her head and told her kick out the car keys, but the keys were still in the car. Valarie's fight or flight kicked in. She threw a punch and yelled out for help as one of the young men got a hold of the keys and tried to get in the driver's seat of the car. Miss Edna heard the commotion and saw her daughter was in trouble. The elderly woman's maternal instincts still kicked in, and she ran out to help. Valarie, holding on to the car door, now one of the young men started to drag her. As they attempted to drive the car away, Miss Edna was hit, and then they fled the neighborhood. Both women badly injured, but were able to call local police. When Baltimore County police responded to the scene, Miss Edna and Miss Valarie were both rushed to a local hospital. Valarie had major injuries to her head and other areas of her body, and Miss Edna had multiple cuts, a fractured pelvis, and other broken bones from being ran over with the car. But fortunately, and what seemed to be a miracle, both women would survive their injuries. The community was outraged and in shock. Who would carjack 2 older women, one being in their 60s, bringing groceries to her mother who was almost 90 years old. County police got on a hunt. They used city cameras and the car's GPS to locate his movements that night. Video surveillance showed the car stop at a local Royal Farms. A young man get out and used Miss Valarie's credit card to purchase some items before the car then fled off. The tags on the car had already been flipped from Maryland tags to Virginia tags, so police couldn't track the vehicle that way. But they got a tip. The stolen Acura was being posted all over social media for sale on Instagram, with the account belonging to a young man police were very familiar with, Darius Wolfe. A video on his page showed him joyriding in the car with 2 other young men, driving through Cherry Hill, South Baltimore, smoking and acting like nothing ever happened. Police quickly got another tip. Another suspect was 17-year-old Reginald Belton, who they determined was the one using the stolen credit card. Both young men were eventually tracked down and taken into custody. As evidence showed, Reginald was the one using the stolen credit card at Royal Farms and to buy food on DoorDash, and Darius was trying to sell the car on social media. The third suspect was never identified. Both young men were charged with armed carjacking, assault, and other charges. And this time, both were charged as adults. As Miss Valarie found out who the suspects was, she was relieved an arrest had been made, but stated the damage was already done, and she was sad they were so young. She said she was forever changed, and also her mother, Miss Edna, who always had been a woman who got around well for her age and didn't live in fear. But now that all changed. Her mother now needed a walker to get around after multiple surgeries, as her leg was broken multiple places from the situation. As the cases started making their way to court, Reginald had at first made a deal with prosecutors. He would testify and take the stand at Darius' trial, who was the oldest out of the 2 men, to get a reduced sentence of 25 years in prison. But when the time came, he recanted, stating he was high when he said that and refused to talk. He attempted to keep the street code, and Reginald would make the judge and prosecutors mad. With his actions, he was eventually found guilty on all charges and was smashed, sentenced to 75 years in prison at just 19 years old. Darius' attorney argued at his court date the young man had PTSD and really didn't understand the consequences of his actions. They asked, could the judge be lenient? But Darius was pointed to as a menace who had over 20 times to get it right, but every time he chose the streets. They pointed out he had just been arrested for a carjacking not long before in the same area, but he was charged as a juvenile. As Miss Valarie and Miss Edna got up to give their victim impact statements, they both spoke about their injuries, the surgeries, the physical and mental trauma from that day. Miss Valarie recalled hearing one of the young men say, "Just shoot her, yo," with a gun to her head. She also stated being dragged and watching her mother being ran over did something to her mental state. The judge agreed, called the crime heinous, and Darius was found guilty and was hit with the book, sentenced to 95 years in prison at just 21 years old. In total, both young men received a combined sentence of 170 years for their actions that summer day. People had mixed reactions about the verdicts. Some felt, due to the nature of the crime, that the time given was just, but others felt it was too much time, including Darius' father. He stated they begged the system for years, time after time, for help with him, but he claimed he would be laughed at and taken as a joke, and now it's too late. But both Miss Valarie and Miss Edna felt justice was served. Fortunately, in this situation, no one lost their life, but Shorty and them definitely out of pocket, carjacking and dragging two elderly women, then trying to sell the car on social media. I get being young, not knowing no better, because I once was there as well. But unfortunately, for some young men, they keep doing the same thing, thinking it can happen to everybody around them, but not them. What I mean by that, you see close friends lose their life at an early age, or go to prison, get football numbers, and in your mind, that's yo and them, not me, until it is. Now for a night of joyriding and eating DoorDash, that cost both young men decades in prison. The cold part about it is, they not gonna feel it yet. They still young. They will be eating hookups, playing the phone, calling uptown, and politicking with the other hoppers. But it's gonna hit when they look up one day in their late 30s and realize, like, yo, I might not never get out of here. And that reality will hit harder then. But I'm gonna end this one with a question, fam. Do you think the sentence was too harsh for both young men? Or do you feel because of what they did, they deserved it? Let me know in the comments. Yeah, man, it's a super crazy story. Like I said earlier, fortunately, nobody lost their life. Hopefully, these two women can go on with their life and not live in fear and one day heal from their trauma. But 170 years combined. One got 95 years, the other 75 years in prison. That's wild. But yeah, I ain't gonna talk too much more about this one. Y'all leave it in the comments. I appreciate you if you made it to the end. Y'all already know it's all love, fam. This is another episode of the Baltimore Way. It's your boy Tony 2 times. I'm out.